One of the important things that I like to emphasize when discussing crime-related topics is this idea of escalation. Essentially, it goes as follows. Criminals don't start off, not usually anyway, with the higher tier crimes, with the more violent encounters. Typically, they start off committing a lower tier set of crimes. Now, a lot of people might be thinking that I'm going into broken windows policing in this discussion right now, but that's actually not the case. Broken windows is often misinterpreted by the media, and in reality, in actuality, broken windows was more about the impact of environment on criminality, whether some place looks like nobody cares about it, therefore people will start to act like nobody cares about it. But what I'm talking about here is that our standard retail thieves, our organized retail thieves, typically would go into these situations not looking to escalate towards violence. We've seen videos across the country of them coming in, sophisticated operations that might look thuggish or brutish, where they're in and out in a minute, smash and grab type of robbery, but those aren't necessarily intended to produce conflict with store employees or whatever. But then store employees start intervening, security guards start being added, and that leads to an escalation because these people are not innocent Aladdins just looking to take from the corporate evil rich people and distribute it to the poor kids in their neighborhood. They're actually brutish criminals who don't follow the rules of our society, and when confronted will respond with violence. But what happens in the next step of this? What happens when we're not talking about any more retail stores being located in the area? Now, in some instances, they move on. They go to better off areas where they didn't have as much theft and continue their crime spree because oftentimes they're in the same county, they have the same weak district attorney, and all that. Well, in other instances, what ends up happening is that they escalate to people's alternative, which is typically UPS and postal workers. And this is what's happening in the city of Chicago, as a group of activists has gotten together to try to talk to the gang members to ask them nicely not to do this. And the thing is, that is obviously not working. These robberies, because they inherently involve confrontation, are getting more and more dangerous, and that's what I want to talk about. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And those of you who are listening via Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
A group of local activists are asking gangs to stop shooting and robbing essential workers like UPS drivers and postal carriers.
So one of the things that's becoming frustrating to me as of late, so because I have this channel, I'm going to point it out to you, is the fact that people say words in a sequence, those words end up forming a sentence, that sentence is ridiculous, yet the person saying it is not saying it with the level of contempt and absurdity that is actually required to communicate that information. So we just heard that a group of activists are getting together and community leaders to try to tell the gangs to stop robbing and shooting UPS workers and postal workers.
A group of local activists are asking gangs to stop shooting and robbing essential workers like UPS drivers and postal carriers.
And the reason they're doing this is because there's a dramatic uptick in these types of robberies, and this is largely due to the fact that we're seeing a ton of store closures that are going on in the city of Chicago. We've actually covered this on this channel before. They lost all of their Walmarts and a bunch of other businesses, so now these criminals are going in for more merchandise. But the thing is, a UPS driver inherently has to be there. This is a more conflict-ridden zone, so the result is that these people are ultimately end up getting shot. Now, one of the reasons why I actually think this might produce some level of change is because these people are idiotically also robbing postal workers. That ends up leading to federal implications because they're federal officials, and that could ultimately end up leading, finally, at least hopefully, to some consequences for these people, because as we all know, the biggest culprit behind all of this is one Kimberly Fox, the district attorney who refuses to prosecute anyone for anything, who's always cutting sweetheart breaks for violent criminals, and of course, Brandon Johnson, who talks about how the criminals are traumatized, and the UPS driver that has to dig a bullet out of his back just trying to do his damn job, he could only wish to understand the level of trauma that those innocent Aladdins who put that bullet in his back actually are going through in their whole lives. He should feel privileged that he's being shot by these innocent angels because they're gonna feed those packages to their starving children. Trust me.
So this group of community leaders are joining violence interrupters this morning to speak about the uptick in these crimes. And it comes after a 32-year-old UPS driver was grazed by a bullet Tuesday while they were on the job delivering packages in Humboldt Park.
Now look, I got nothing against community leaders trying to get peace in their area. I got nothing against organizations that are not necessarily the police trying to intercede on behalf of everyday citizens. But we have to be honest. We have to break this down and we have to discuss what is actually going on. And that is violence interrupters do not work. Every single crappy city with the high murder rate, with gangs and all of that, has all these violence interrupter organizations. And you know what happens after years, after decades of them being present? They have an event, they do a PR thing, maybe there's a midnight basketball game thrown here and there, and the shootings continue. Every single time you hear about violence interrupters stepping up in your city, that is a good indication that you might need to look for a job in another city and then follow that up by moving to that other city because you are in an incredibly dangerous city. The fact that you need an organization to go up to them and say, hey, look, these people that you're shooting that are just trying to do their job, you probably shouldn't do that because, you know, they're just middle-class, working-class people, and honestly, they're just trying to do right by their family. We know that you're Aladdin, and your family takes precedent over them, but could you please shoot them a little bit less? Here's an idea. Here's something crazy. I know you guys might be shocked by this. But maybe arrest the people that are doing the shootings. Maybe start breaking up the gang violence. Maybe in the city of Chicago, where they hit over 800 murders for the first time in 25 years, where they have massive store closings, you should probably, arrest the criminals, target the criminals, introduce a task force to, run sting operations on the criminals, and have them negatively impacted by their thuggish actions, rather than sending the social workers, the violence interrupters, the proponents of midnight basketball in order to discuss this with them. But then again, Chicago is one of these places that seems like it might be a lost cause. They had Kimberly Fox. She was absolutely terrible in her first term. She very publicly cut Jussie Smollett that break, and then what happened? They re-elected her. They had Lori Lightfoot, one of the worst mayors in the entire country. Violent crime was spiking dramatically. They ousted her based on the fact that violent crime was the #1 issue, but what did they end up doing? They ended up voting for Brandon Johnson, and unlike what goes on in New York City, where the wealthiest people voted in the Democratic primary for the most progressive crime-denying candidate, but all the minorities and the people actually affected by criminality ended up voting for Eric Adams, who's not perfect, but again, he's the one who ran at least tough on crime. In this instance, Brandon Johnson was put into power by the very neighborhoods that were victimized by Lori Lightfoot. And based on Brandon Johnson's record, he seems to be somebody who's even more in denial of crime, even more in favor of defunding the police, even more in favor of abolishing prisons and all these ridiculous things. So the city of Chicago essentially signed themselves up for this double because they not only elected at the county level the Cook County District Attorney Kimberly Fox, but then they compounded the error by electing Lightfoot and made it even worse by electing Brandon Johnson.
Well, that person is recovering, expected to be fine, but some community members are concerned they won't get deliveries because of these safety concerns.
Look, I'm not trying to give the local news reporter too much crap in this instance. I'm sure she's a nice lady. She looks like a nice lady, and it appears to me at least she's just reading verbatim what activists and violence interrupters are telling her about the concerns of the community. But the fact of the matter is, you have armed robberies being committed against postal workers, UPS workers. They're starting to get shot because an armed robbery is inherently more dangerous. Again, this is the logical progression of allowing retail crime to go unchallenged, of allowing organized criminals to get into the retail crime game, and the stores closing up, thus leading all these criminal groups looking for another revenue stream, and that, of course, becoming the packages that we all get delivered. But the fact is, this woman just said that they're concerned that the danger is going to prevent them from getting deliveries. And the way that's phrased is so cold, it's so calculating, and it really goes to show you the heart of the problem in this country, which is the fact that a lot of people are more concerned or don't get concerned unless it affects them personally. And even when there's horrific violence that's going on in their communities, as long as it doesn't negatively impact them, it's not considered that big of a deal. And people get real comfortable in that mindset. But then when it starts to affect them, they start to complain about it. But since they were never really invested in a genuine way in solving crime, they complain about it in some of the most cold and ridiculous ways possible.
Well, that person is recovering, expected to be fine, but some community members are concerned they won't get deliveries because of these safety concerns.
The fact of the matter is, they should be concerned not because they might miss their package from Amazon. I mean, say whatever you want about Amazon, the company, but they do in fact have a great returns policy and great policies if your package is stolen or lost and all that. They're very consumer focused. But they should be concerned about the lives of these FedEx drivers, these UPS drivers, these post office drivers who are being threatened and sometimes taken due to the fact that criminality is allowed to run wild throughout their city. That's what the focus should be. And you know what? I'm actually all for UPS and FedEx, and if it's illegal for the post office to do so, to stop delivering packages to this area. You vote for Kimberly Fox, she doesn't prosecute anybody. You vote for Brandon Johnson, he goes soft on crime. He ends up limiting and hamstringing the cops even more than Lori Lightfoot. UPS drivers end up getting shot, they end up getting killed, they end up getting robbed repeatedly. You don't get the convenience of having packages delivered to your door. You have to go to a warehouse. You have to go out of your way to pick it up. You don't get to enjoy the online shopping experience. And that's your life until you actually produce the change. You don't have retail stores anymore to compete with Amazon and that fast delivery. Well, guess what? That is an inconvenience that was self-inflicted by you not taking this seriously when you had the chance. So yeah, UPS, they just had a great union contract for the workers apparently. That's fine and dandy. You should actually put this in the stipulation that you're not going to do this anymore. It is not worth the business in order to have your people's lives be taken over and over and over again, because residents in the city of Chicago want to vote for and endorse criminal activity while at the same time trying to have the convenience and joys of shopping. Maybe this would actually put some pressure on Brandon Johnson to reallocate some of that money from the violence interrupters and these violence intervention teams that do absolutely nothing, and, you know, empower the police department to actually act on behalf of the citizens and drive the murder rate down, drive the robbery rate down. Stop pretending these people are Aladdin and actually do their damn job. Look, I see signs all the time across this country of hope, of a potential reversal of these negative trends in pockets in this nation. I've actually talked about and been very fair to London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco of all places, and the residents of San Francisco who voted out Chesa Boudin, because they're at least talking about and even taking some minimal actions to go in the right direction. But then there's other places, and in that other place kind of category would be the city of Philadelphia, would be Oakland, and of course would be the city of Chicago, because they seem committed to going down this path, this road to hell, and nothing seems to be able to deter them. And now when I look for news stories out of the city of Chicago to try to keep my ear to the ground, finger on the pulse of the city, I'm greeted by dumb headline after dumb headline and dumb stories attached to those headlines, just like this one. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think people not able to get home delivery of their packages might be the straw that finally breaks the camel's back in the city of Chicago? Or do you think they're going to be deploying these violence interrupters and we're going to see people like Brandon Johnson grandstanding outside of a UPS warehouse to talk about how, oh my god, all this evil racism not delivering packages to the dangerous neighborhoods in Chicago, let's ignore the danger and just say it's because those are black neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. Wow, 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 evil white racism. You know that's coming. You know that's what's going to happen. But again, let me know your opinion, even though I've skewed it beyond all recognition and I've totally biased you, down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about an absurd story out of Chicago yet again. Till next time.